few minutes for a commercial about protecting Geauga Parks and protect geaugaparks.us, our website, and talk about where we are and where we want to go. And then we have a talk by Jim Bissell from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. It probably should be said that Mr. Bissell's presence here is not necessarily his or the museum's endorsement of what we're doing, but we're certainly attempting to reach out and try to do more educational programs so that we have a broader understanding of the issues involved in the Geauga Park controversy. Having said that, we have a couple of special guests who want to say a few words before we get underway. And so I'm going to have Charlie and Amelia come up and introduce themselves. And don't forget, under here we have our mascot. As many of you remember, we were told we might have to howl like coyotes for 6 years. So we'll talk about Wiley and Wiley's adventures in a few minutes. Charlie and Amelia, you want to introduce yourselves and say a few words?
I'm Amelia. I'm Amelia.
I'm Charlie. Did you see that black rat snake that was like 4 feet long?
No, I was on the swings.
Do you remember when you put birdseed on your hand and then the chickadees eat right out of your hand?
No, I was on the monkey bars, but that sounds pretty cool.
Did you see that yellow-spotted salamander under the rock?
No, I was on the slide.
Do you remember when John Kolar pretended to be John Muir and we went on a hike?
Who's John Muir?
John Muir is the one who encouraged Teddy Roosevelt to protect the Yosemite parks.
Oh.
Now get off the playground and let's go on a hike.
Okay, let's go hug some trees.
Very nice. Very, very educational. All right. There we go. Our mission statement, I think we all have looked at some point. We want to promote, support, and actively campaign for conservation, preservation, and protection of the parks as the primary role of the parks, because they have our water and our air and our beauty in this area, and we need to protect those things. In order to do that, we have looked at the bylaws as they were changed, and we've come up with 6 goals that we think we ought to be focused on, and you folks ought to focus on as you go forward. We want to revoke the current bylaws and reinstate the bylaws that said that conservation, preservation, protection were the primary goals of the park, and that all recreation had to be consistent with those goals. In essence, what's being called passive recreation. We want to reinstate the bylaws for future generations and to educate the public. Thank you, public. While making the parks reasonably available to all people. That means all-purpose trails, that means trails for the handicapped, but it doesn't mean all activities. It means all people, not necessarily all activities. We want to require that the park board personnel conduct all business in an open, transparent manner. There's got to be no more of the closed room sessions, no more of the private deals, no more of the bad record keeping for things like trapping and hunting. All surveys, because they're talking about doing another survey, have to be done by a reputable company. We know what push surveys are like. Push surveys are used during political campaigns to push a particular way, a particular agenda, and we want these surveys to be conducted in an open manner and evaluated by an independent body. We want to review the authority of the park staff and the executive director. Right now, they've cut the heart out of the executive director's spot so that everything has to go through the board. And you will not get a qualified, competent, well-experienced director to come into a position that's had the heart cut out of it like this one has been. And these parks deserve, and the staff deserves, and the people of this county deserve a director who can keep the heritage of the parks going. We want to work with the state and local officials and other interested parties to revise state laws to make park boards more accountable to the public. Right now they're accountable to one person, and we see where that's going. So what's new? Well, Mr. Getz has been sworn in as the newest member of the Park District. Near as we can tell, his experience has been that he helped set up a township park which includes an awful lot of recreation equipment, but not anything about preservation. I don't know how many of you saw the David Lang editorial, but what I really liked is he counted the letters that have come in to him. 54 letters have been critical of the new direction being taken by the Park District. 35 individuals submitted those letters. How many people have sent a letter and it's been published? All right, good. We need to keep it up. We've seen letters today that have started calling people names, that have started a campaign of slander against this group. They don't have arguments. All they can do is call us names. We need to keep putting our arguments right in front of them, and our 6 goals right in front of them. Every opportunity we get. You need to get those letters in. We need to keep this campaign going. We've gotten 3 editorials. The Plain Dealer, the Maple Leaf, and the Chagrin Valley Times have all published editorials in our favor. And we need to keep this drumbeat going. The next board meeting, is Kathleen Allen here? Kathleen Allen put a post on the Facebook page that suggested that everyone who visited the parks send a note to the board and to Mr. Oros saying, hey, I was in the park and I enjoyed X. And I enjoyed X because it was quiet, it was restful, it was peaceful, it was reinvigorating, it was educating, whatever it was. My experience would have been ruined if there had been a gun range nearby. My experience would have been ruined if a snowmobile or an ATV went by. We need to start putting pressure on, because all we hear from the judge and others is, well, I'm getting letters that say that everybody agrees with him. Well, let's flood him with letters that say otherwise. There are possibility 2 more commissioners are going to be appointed. Mr. Johnston's term comes up at the end of December, and he has said that he does not want to be reappointed. And it's possible that Ms. Shumway will take a position with the probate court, and her spot will come open. So this will make 2+ boards in the past 4 years. There is no continuity. There is no institutional memory. There is nobody there who understands the continuity of the budget. We're having a budget voted on next Tuesday by a person who's been on board for 6 months and a person who's been on the board at that point for close to 2 weeks. Our next meeting, and I think we're still looking for a venue for it, but we're going to have Tim Barber of Environ in to talk about his report. And his report is on our website, and it's very, very interesting, very illuminating about the value of the parks for economic and other reasons. Currently, the next park board meeting is scheduled for December 9th at 7 p.m. at Westwoods. I I say currently because we all know their history. So keep an eye on the website. Be sure that within 24 hours of that time, that the date, the place, time, thing has been changed, because they're likely to change it. But that's the current schedule. The 2015 budget and the new commissioners are going to be issues. Interestingly, Kathy has been trying to schedule the January meeting with Kim Barber and has found that they're not scheduling any of the large meeting rooms until after December 15 now. So we can't figure out where our meeting is going to be, because we wanted it at Westwoods or Big Creek or someplace like that. But they said there's possibly a new policy going to be in effect. That's going to be interesting. Yes. So given all that, don't forget, Wile E. Coyote, our little friend down here. Wiley has been, if you've been following the Facebook, has been all over the place. He's been to Westwoods, he's been to Beartown, and there are essays accompanying all the photos on Facebook. We have Catherine and Jean. Where's Jean? Oh, right there, been right in front of me, sorry. To thank for taking Wiley around and showing him all the parks. I understand from Kathleen that we've got 4 more parks to visit, that she's going to be updating the Facebook page with more of his adventures and more essays about the individual parks as she goes through them. As soon as Wiley is done with the parks, if anybody's interested in taking Wiley, say, on a sled ride when the snow's on the ground, or fishing when spring comes, or bird watching when spring comes, I think that would be a nice thing. And so get a hold of Sandy or me, and we will we'll check Wiley's schedule and see if he can be available for you. I'm going to turn this over to Kathy. Kathy, whatever I miss, Kathy, you're responsible for.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's great to see the room full. The Kent State people thought you're not going to get 70 people on a Thursday night. But looks like we did it. So it's all up to you. Thank you so much for being here. It's my great pleasure to introduce a local conservation hero, Dr. Jim Bissell. Jim has done more for conservation and the preservation of natural areas in Ohio than anybody I know of. Since 1972, when he was given the title of Curator of Botany for the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, Jim has worked to protect the natural areas of Ohio. In 1976, Jim was named the Museum Curator of Natural Areas, and since then, the natural areas have increased to more than 2,000 acres. In 2004, he was the recipient of the George Fell Award for Natural Areas Association for his lifetime achievement. And in 2009, Jim was introduced into the Natural Areas Hall of Fame. His work continues, and we're really lucky to have him here, and we're lucky to have him in Northeastern Ohio. So, without further ado, here's Jim.
It's my pleasure to be here. If I wander away from the microphone and you can't hear me, raise your hand and I'll come closer. But everybody can hear me okay right now? Okay. Is this ready to go? Before I... Okay, we'll see. I may be talking all night, but anyway. I've worked with every park director since the park was founded, and Geauga County Park District has been doing it the best of any park district in this region. There's without a doubt. They balanced conservation against public use the best. They protected some of the most important sites in this county. And the museum has actually worked with them from the time I started the museum, of course, in 1971. And we started an inventory program throughout Northeastern Ohio in '73, and never been done before. No one had ever done a comprehensive inventory program for the Cleveland region. We actually extended into Pennsylvania in 1984, and now we're pretty much the authority on Northwest Pennsylvania and Presque Isle now. But a lot of things we thought would be rare, we proved were not so rare. Because everything that was known about rarity was someone coming up from Columbus or Kent, and they'd see something, they thought it was outstanding, and I'd never seen it before. And we started looking, it turns out, a lot of those plants or snow belt species occur from the east side of Cleveland all the way through Lake and Geauga County into Ashtabula, Pennsylvania. So we've actually taken 200 plants thought to be rare in 1980 off the list. On the other hand, we found new plants, especially in this county, in Ashtabula County, that nobody had ever seen before. And like in 1981, in just south of Big Creek, I hope somebody can get the program going, but I can talk all night if I have to. We found a little grass that had never been seen. It's endangered now. It's still the only place. It's a little bluegrass. It's on private land, but the private landowner really likes it. And it's been changed hands a couple of times, and the new landowner loves the plant and the other rare plants that occur there. So we're rolling pretty soon.
Is that it? Can you tell me?
Yeah, that's it. So this is the. Okay.
Yep, that's all.
Well, actually, can we actually fill the whole?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. This is Fern Lake Bog, and this has been known, part of this has been known by the museum since 1956. We bought another 7 acres in 1997, but we share the basin with the Geauga Park District, and actually the museum surveyed the Geauga wetlands and Burton wetlands, if you call various things, in the 1970s. We found more than 33 rare species. Many of them were new to the basin, but it made it one of the most important wetlands, bog systems and fen systems in northern Ohio. So I've been on the Northern Nature Conservancy since 1980, and I raised a lot of money to purchase it through the Nature Conservancy. It became a campaign project. So it's a huge deep peat basin. The peat to the foreground is 16 feet deep. The peat on the back is actually 30 feet deep. It's been accumulating for over 14,000 years. There'll be spruce and fir cones and needles and pollen at the base. And but this system in Lake Kelso are actually a globally rare system. It's not just bogs are common up north, and we used to call this a bog. But it turns out most of what we call a bog in the state of Ohio is something called a poor fen, because the water of this lake is 6.5, almost neutral. The water of Lake Kelso is actually 7. But the shoreline, where you have tamaracks and things like leatherleaf, which is a rare shrub in Ohio, in the rhododendron family, it's very acidic. So in Ohio, Northwest Pennsylvania, a little bit in Michigan, Indiana, and Minnesota, that's the only place they occur. But you go further north, everything's acidic. The water's acidic, the shore is acidic. So poor fens have a very limited distribution, and most of them are gone. Geauga Lake was one of the best. There's nothing left at Geauga Lake. A lot of the bogs were destroyed by various, peat mining, draining. So this is pristine. Of course, Lake Kelso's pristine. And some of the coolest plants we found here, these glacial relic plants. The sundew. This is roundleaf sundew. It's an insectivorous plant. Grows in the sphagnum around, goes Fern Lake Bog, Lake Kelso. It's a really cool plant because the little insects will get on it. Actually, the leaves are sticky, and the insect will stick to it, and they'll actually dissolve them. So that's why they're called insect-eating plants. And one of the coolest ones, and it's quite rare now, is the pitcher plant. People are stealing these. They grow in both bogs and fens, but there's been a lot of theft lately. We have it because we have it at Fern Lake. We also have it in a bog, the museum bog in Summit County called Singer Lake Bog. But it's now threatened. So it's moved up in status. The highest category of rarity is endangered. It means that there's, in general, only 1 to 3 occurrences in the state of Ohio. And some things are globally rare. And there's globally rare species in the Burton wetlands or Geauga wetlands. In fact, in 1991, I invited John O'Meara, when he was park director, and Dan Best, to join me because I had found the first occurrence of a globally rare plant that was considered for federal listing in Ashtabula County. It was in a habitat very similar to what we call the white pine bog, which is actually a white pine fen. It's actually an alkaline sea beach south of Pond Road, and we found 400. The thing is, since then, I said we did listed a lot of things. Since then, I've actually found 50 occurrences in Pennsylvania, 30 occurrences in Ohio, and so it's no longer a global, it's still considered G3, which is very rare, reached throughout its range, but it's no longer a federal candidate species because of the work we did, some people work in Indiana and also in Minnesota. So the whole point is what is truly rare? The system, once again, the Kelso Lake is one of the most important glacial lakes, and of course it's a poor fen, it's not a bog. People have been calling them bogs for a long time. I did too. It's just been recently that we discovered that because of the alkaline waters of places like Kelso, which is actually 7, and then Fern Lake, which is a pH of 6.5, they are poor fens. Now the greatest thing we have in northeastern Ohio, whether it be in Ashtabula County, we have some of the finest deciduous forests in the world. This is a picture of a beech and sugar maple and hemlock forest, and the park is loaded with them. There's examples of this in Big Creek and the Westwoods, but especially in Big Creek. There's a spectacular occurrence of stands and outstanding forest birds occur in these forests. Now forests, some people have said the parks are big enough. No, not one park in this system is big enough. The largest park right now is the Observatory Park, and it's 1,200 acres. That's not big enough to sustain forest birds. You want a minimum of 3,000 acres for most forest birds. They need large contiguous forests, especially things like ovenbirds and wood thrush. They're not something you find, unless you live on the edge of a woods, you're not going to be hearing wood thrush. You have to have a large forest for wood thrush, ovenbirds, wooded warblers, and especially one of the most globally rare birds we have, the Cerulean warbler. This bird has been declining in eastern North America since 1966. It's been dropping 4% per year because we're losing the forests. It needs to breed in. They stay. How many people have seen this bird ever? It's a rare sight because they're way in the tops of the trees, and they're especially in oak, beech, sugar maple, hemlock areas. And there's many sites. Big Creek is big enough to have them. It's not as big as it should be, but it's big enough. And but this is a tall forest species. It's almost electrical when you see it. You have to use binoculars. If you're lucky, you'll see one in migration down low. But for the most part, they have a beautiful song. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me. But there's only 400,000 left. And at the rate, now they're also having trouble in Colombia and Peru because of, if you can buy shade-grown coffee, please do it. Because growing coffee without shade trees, this bird needs to eat insects both here and when it's down in the tropics. So one of the problems with it is when people are converting forest-grown coffee when the shade-grown coffee to open-grown, then this bird suffers. Most of the other warblers we have will eat other things or eat down low. This tree feeds in the treetops, both down in the tropics and also here. And of course, in the month of June in Big Creek, if you go in the right places, you can hear this singing. But it's extremely rare and globally declining. We need larger forests to sustain this, and of course, many of the other forest birds I'm about to show you. I'm a botanist, but I really like birds and everything else: snakes, frogs, toads, you name it. Now, I'm going to tell you about how many people in this room have ever heard heard about a butterfly called the West Virginia white butterfly. Great. Because it's globally declining, it used to be common, it requires, and it lives in our great deciduous forests, like Big Creek, and it also does really well in the swamp forest at Observatory Park. There's a great population of it. And another property, the museum was responsible for finding. Montville Swamp isn't public yet, but it's about 800-acre wetland that the museum discovered in 1983. We found, once again, species new to the state of Ohio, something called swamp gray currant. But both in Montville Swamp and the Observatory Park, in the swampy forests, the butterfly is quite common. So the other places common, maybe the best population left in northern Ohio, or there's two. Our Grand River Terraces, which is 993-acre preserve the museum has in the Grand River, and then Swine Creek. I think right now Swine Creek is beat out the terraces. We had a rain event in 2008, believe it or not, that actually, the butterflies only fly between the middle of April and the middle of May. They look like, and they need spring wildflowers. So the white trillium, the yellow trout lily, they're nectar plants for it. The butterfly has to have a lot of nectar. So the butterfly, if you walk into the woods, and they're slow flyers, they look like the cabbage white you see all through the summer. This one only flies, once again, between the middle of April to middle of May, and it's a slow flyer. It doesn't go outside the woods. It requires the woods. So just like the warblers, the wood thrush requires forests. You're not going to see them out in the scrub thicket or behind somebody's house in the city. Another great plant, we mentioned Swine Creek. The plant, how many people have ever seen the plant? How many arms am I going to see? The plant towards me, the green thing that's, okay, 1, 2. This is the coolest plant. This is in the violet family. This is the green violet, but it has a stem. It's called green violet. Right now, there's only 2 occurrences in northern Ohio. Swine Creek. It used to be 100 years ago, it was in the Painesville area. 100 years ago, it was in Lorain County. I think 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, in Medina County. There's only 2 extant occurrences of that right now. So the green violet is in Swine Creek. And then there's a property the museum's about to buy, a 400-acre property along Mill Creek in Ashtabula County, which we hope to close on before the end of this year. That's the only other place we know of it. It's only site in Ashtabula County. So and in northwest Pennsylvania, there's none. You have to go way over. It's in southern Ohio. It's not a listed plant, but in our region, it's extremely rare. So if you had if you were looking at Geauga County, this is endangered in the county. It's endangered in northeastern Ohio. And the other plant is it's a toothwort, but it's not the common toothwort. The toothwort, as a group, in the genus Cardamine, they're the food plant of the West Virginia white. Every one of them. This is an extremely rare toothwort, but it's a food plant for it. It only occurs 3 places that we know of in northeastern Ohio. The Grand River Terraces, once again. A museum's property in Trumbull County called Chamberlain Forest, and then, once again, Swine Creek. Swine Creek has one of the most spectacular wildflower diversities of any place in northeastern Ohio. So there's Big Creek. The one thing I should have mentioned, that's only going to stay that way with stewardship. And the park up until now is doing spectacular stewardship. The wildlife manager, the biological manager, and the staff are dedicated to stewardship. The whole program to remove deer. If you have too many deer, all these wildflowers I showed you are going to be gone. There's going to be no shrubs in the story, and you're going to lose your birds. You're also going to lose the West Virginia white butterfly and every other insect that requires these understory plants. But so management or stewardship is key to saving these lands for the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. You've got to do stewardship, and so that's got to be a very important. It's something that everybody needs to shout to the rooftops. We need to do stewardship. So but like I say, that toothwort on the other side is like it's I don't remember its common name, but it's genus and species Cardamine angustata. I can remember scientific names because I use them more than common names. And spring beauty, one of the most common. And there's the Western white. The way it differs from a cabbage white, there's absolutely no black marks on the wing. When you look down at it, if you get close to it, the body's a little dark, but it's pure white, slow flyer, and it's disappearing. It used to occur in forests from northern Alabama to West Virginia to Ohio. Like I say, it was in several Cleveland metro parks. It hasn't been seen in Cleveland metro parks, mostly probably because of the deer. Invasive overrun, and then deer ate the food plant and the nectar plants. They not only, because the deer eat the food plant, all those toothworts get eaten by the deer. So now the Ansel's Cave, West Woods. I'm sorry, a lot of the people involved in particular West Woods are not here right now. But I've been going there since I started working at the museum when the American Society for Metals let me on. We found some really cool, there's some fens on the property, but there's some most spectacular ledges. And the ledges, and there's ledges on many of the, like Welton Gorge, or Bachman Gorge, which I'll show you in a minute. That's another one that, it's really funny. I was doing work inventorying a property in Erie County. A physics professor from Oberlin College, Dan Steyer, he'd been inventorying for a couple of times with me. And so I said, hey Jim, I was going to buy this property and give it to the museum near Burton, but it's $1.4 million and I really can't buy it. I really can't afford it. And so I called the Park District. I said, hey, let's go look at this for sale. Let's go look. And we found rare species. My staff went back and found more rare species, and now it's the Barkman Preserve. And it was purchased. And of course, the museum does serve a role. We do inventories for everybody, every conservation organization. A mayor can call us, of course, park districts, private landowners can call us, and we will go on their property and see if it's something special. And sometimes when we do that, in one case, we went on a property in Lake County. The woman asked us to look, and we finally did it a couple of years, and the next day she pledged to give it to the museum. It's on Big Creek on Cascade Road in Concord Township. But prothonotary warbler is a little bit out of sequence. This was kind of thrown together because I was working on, I think there was some expert testimony it was supposed to be due on Monday, and I was putting this together with providing this expert testimony for a hearing on it to be involved in. But you have one of the most spectacular populations of prothonotary warbler. And how many people know, I bet you a lot of people don't know about the prothonotary warbler and where it is. Well, same sector of the audience, but anyway. They're warblers that nest in tree holes, and they're quite rare, quite local. In fact, we only have one occurrence. The museum has 46 preserves right now. We're at like 6,400 acres. We're about to go over 7,000 acres. We only have it one place. And you have a ream of them at your, on the Geauga River on Rapids Road. Your staff has been putting out little nesting containers. Metamucil containers, I think is what they're using. It has worked really well. So you have a huge population of the prothonotary warbler. They have beautiful song, but they are a swamp species, rivers too. And of course, that stretch for the Geauga River is very wet. There's wetlands all through it. But I think it's got to be pretty much the largest population of prothonotary warblers in northeastern Ohio. Like I say, we have it in one place out of 46 preserves. And most of our preserves are wetlands too. We get excited when we see a prothonotary warbler. Well, Geauga County, thanks to the Rapids Road Park, which I know I should remember its name, but to me it's the Rapids Road Park because it's Eldon Russell. So it's worth canoeing down that river to see these birds. And because warblers, most of our breeding birds are forest birds and swamp birds breed in the month of June. You hear them singing from May to June. winter wren, one of the coolest birds going. Once again, it's a deep forest bird. It's usually associated with hemlock, often in gorges, but like Big Creek, even we've seen it in Montville Swamp. It's in several of the hemlock forests all through the Geauga Park system, and it's an extremely rare bird. It's a northern bird, a New England bird. It has the most beautiful song. How many people in the room have ever heard a winter wren sing? Once again, same sector here. Well, it's and then the black-footed green warbler, another hemlock-associated bird. There's a beautiful song as well. Purple finch, that's another one you often get in hemlocks, but the all three of these are rare birds. They're actually listed at some level or another in the state of Ohio. And once again, this park district has been done the most spectacular job of not, I gotta repeat, they've acquired these great places, but they haven't overrun them with trails. They haven't cleared the trails too large. They've really balanced well preservation against public use. And they've done such I say, the best job of any park I know. And I work with all the parks. The hooded warbler is another one that is, this nests on the ground. So, I mean, it's a really low and sometimes right on the ground with ovenbirds. And I'm not sure I ended up getting the ovenbird. Ovenbird's another extremely cool bird that nests down low, and wood thrush, and hermit thrush. And hermit thrush you have in the county as well. But if deer remove the understory, this bird, all those understory birds like wood thrush, ovenbird, hermit thrush, they're not going to be there. They're not going to nest. So, and the other thing is they need a lot of, going back to stewardship, they need a lot of caterpillars, all of our birds, even wrens, which eat seeds a lot. They need caterpillars when they're feeding their young. They need thousands of caterpillars, and almost all of our migrating, birds, the warblers, need caterpillars. If you have invasive shrubs in the understory, like glossy buckthorn, which is trying to take over the world, especially this county and all the surrounding counties and every preserve we own, it's our biggest nemesis. They don't produce the caterpillars. And of course, the great managers of the park know that, and so they were doing the best job I know of getting rid of the glossy buckthorn and maintaining the native witch hazel, especially. Witch hazel is just loaded. It's a nice native shrub that's loaded with caterpillars. So here's the gorge again that Dan Steyer, the physics professor, it was so weird. He came on one inventory of this place called Camp Timberline on the Vermilion River. And then the next trip, he'd actually found out that there was a gorge for sale in east of Burton. And so I called the park staff. We all went out there. It was for sale. And we went and really liked it. And so we actually did the inventory to find the rare species to justify to rank it for getting funding from District 7, Clean Ohio. There's some more shots. Let's say now the bats. There's bats in these caves. These caves are cool. I don't know if this one's open yet. Is it? Is Parkman open? That's the other problem. Some of our great parks, they haven't had a chance to actually open them up. And this one, I can't wait till it is open to the public. But there are great caves. There's great caves at Angel's. In Angel's Cave, there's bats as well. And several of the parks, the rookery's got some nice ones. So the great thing about the parks are the number of rare bats. They found some really rare bats in the Geauga Park districts. I remember when we had a Headwaters BioBlitz, they got a couple good bats. Of course, the barred owl. It's a common bird actually, but it's actually a forest bird. It's more, I mean, you don't find it in small tracks, just like you don't find there's the things like the swirling warbler or the ovenbird or the hooded warbler in small forest tracks. The vernal pools, this place, everyone, most of the parks have great vernal pools, especially if you had a chance to go to the observatory park. Once again, it's got a tremendous population of western white butterfly, and you have such cool diversity of the mole salamanders, most of which go to the ponds in the spring. How many people have been on one of the trips with the park staff to see them go to the ponds in April on a rainy night? We should all do it. It's, I mean, you get, it's a rainy night in April, the first warm night, they send them all congregating these small vernal ponds. They can be really small. It's just like, like 20 feet across. It's big. They can be 10 feet across, can support them. And there's several different kinds. And the spotted is probably the most famous. And it's big. Everybody, when they see it for the first time, they can't believe it's something native around here. But the coolest one, and the rarest one, of the mole salamanders for us, is this one. And this one doesn't go to the ponds in the spring, like the Jeffersons, which occurs in Geauga County Parks, along with the Spotted occur in Geauga County Parks. This one has a philosophy of going to the ponds in the fall, and then they breed, and then the larvae are partly grown in the spring. And they're in Lake County and Big Creek, and we just found one place at the property I mentioned we're about to buy in Ashtabula County. It's right on the Geauga County line in Trumbull Township. 2 years ago on a members trip, we found larvae of this one. So we found the first confirmed record for Ashtabula County. But they're more in southern Ohio. The museum does have they're isolated population on Kelly's Island, but they're extremely local to Geauga Lake and western Ashtabula County. And they're spectacular, big. They're big like the spotted salamanders, but they're black and white, marbled. How many people have seen this? Fewer. It's a cool beast. There's the spotted. I bet you, okay, I mean, we have more hands this time. How many people have seen the spotted salamander? Yes. And the site is worth it. I mean, I can't wait until I never let a spring go by that I don't try to find them. And of course, if you don't go to the ponds at night, you can actually find them in the daytime by lifting little logs nearby the pond. You can almost always find some in April, mid-April, late March, April, into early May. Now, back to the Geauga River. And actually, I should say something about rivers in general. You are the headwaters of 3 of the greatest streams flowing into Lake Erie. Around Chardon, you have the headwaters of the Cuyahoga, the headwaters of the Grand, and the headwaters of the Scrim, which is, of course, Bass Lake. And I guess it's the secret's out. We actually, when we did surveys for the Trust for Public Lands in 2010, and this is something on the Cuyahoga, but I was going to mention something about dragonfly. Anyway, in 2010, we did surveys for the Trust for Public Lands to try to find data to justify the purchase of the last 195 acres at Bass Lake. So the park district now has 700 acres, but the last parcel was actually immediately adjacent to the brook trout stream, Springbrook. So it's west of Springbrook, south of Wilson Mills Road, and then east of Auburn. And there's some ledges on it, outstanding springs. And while we were doing the intros, we found one rare bird. We found wild rice later in the summer. It's one of the only occurrence of wild rice left in the county. And but we found a dragonfly. It turned out it was the 8th occurrence in Ohio. Now, the first occurrence for that dragonfly was found in the museum's colic or fen. Never been seen before in Ohio, in 1995. Actually, a previous park commissioner found that he was doing a butterfly inventory for us. And then we found it in a place called our North Angel Sand Barrens. But so it was a brand new record of this extremely rare dragonfly that the larva lives in seeps, and it lives as a larva for 5 years. Almost all our rare dragonflies, our river dragonflies and our bog and fen dragonflies, and there's some great ones I should have mentioned at Lake Kelso. We have the racket-tailed emerald, which is endangered. It's 5 years in the water, and it's there because of the high pH of the water. It's because it's a port fen. But the southern pygmy clubtail is the one we found. So we had enough rare species that the Park District ranked for receiving the grant, the funds to buy it, and it was a lot of money. It was $2.3 million. So you probably know that, or maybe you don't know, that one of the park commissioners called the funding source and said, "We don't want it." So we reapplied, and we ranked to get the funding. And last December, now if you live in Chardon, which I'm not happy it was in the headlines of the Chardon paper last December when we were trying to get permission from them to buy some land next to our colleague friend in Munson Township, but we bought it. We bought the 195 acres, and we're holding it until the Park District can take it. Now, if we end up owning it, we're already partners with the Park District at Fern Lake Bog and Lake Kelso. It'll be fine, but it's a spectacular property. But back to, this is another cool dragonfly because the river jewel wing is pretty much only known in Burton on the Geauga River. Once again, Ellen Russell Park. And it's endangered. It's the only place known. So there are several, like I mentioned the racket-tailed emerald. When we did a BioBlitz at Montville Swamp, which is actually not called, I call it Montville Swamp, but what's the park's name for it? Does anybody? That's okay. It's south of Whitney Road. It's east of 528. It's 800 acres, and it's coming to the park. Right now, it's the landowner has a life estate on it. So but it's coming to you. Anyway, we found the racket-tailed emerald also there, and these wonderful big beaver ponds. But once again, our rare dragonflies, they're in the water, in the river as nymphs, or they're in the springs, or they're in the waters of places like Lake Kelso. And the other dragonflies, like the green darner, they go to Florida, they come back, in 6 weeks they find any old pond, and then 6 weeks there's another green darner. They're not of conservation concern. The dragonflies are, in fact, the rarest dragonflies are the stream species. There's 450 dragonflies in North America. 10% of them are globally imperiled. And of those, most of them are river species. 90% of that 10% are river species. So the rivers are the ones where you really need, and this park district has made such an effort to protect miles of the Grand, Chagrin, and Geauga River. Yes, John?
Jim, I think that's Springbrook Preserve. Springbrook, I believe. The name of that preserve, I think it's Springbrook. Am I right?
Springbrook?
It's a pine crest.
Pinebrook. Thank you.
Excuse me.
But wait, like I say, I called it Montville Swamp for so many years. In fact, I remember when John O'Meara was here. We first went there in 1983, and we found something called hollowbush, which I should have thrown in the slideshow, which is threatened. And there's a lot of hollowbush in this county. There's all hollowbush in swamps at Observatory Park, and there's hollowbush in Big Creek. But it's confined to the snow belt. It's only in Ashtabula, Lake, and Geauga County. That's it. And then that might be my last slide. No, spider turtle. This is another one. This is extremely rare. We find it. It's in the park. I'm not going to say which park because I don't want someone that go, hey, that one, because these are for sale in the illegal pet trade. You do have them in your park. They're now listed in every state. They weren't for a while listed in Florida, so they occur around the Great Lakes and down the coastal plain of Florida. They're now in trouble in every state, mostly because of habitat loss and raccoons. Once again, the park's done a great job. We do it too. We trap raccoons on our preserves to preserve spotted turtles. We have a huge population of spotted turtles in one of our preserves, and we would not have any without controlling of the raccoons. And so once again, this is part of the stewardship program that the park has been doing so well. I can't say enough about the great track record that this park has had in doing it right. So let me see. I thought that was the last one. Let me see. Oh, I was glad that they were talking about a black snake because I put a black snake in because I like snakes too. And this is a great snake. It eats rats and mice, and they're not as vicious as a lot of snakes. They're not like a water snake that come up and bite you. They're extremely beneficial. So that's my last slide. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I hope I could say, as far as parks, green space in general, I should have said this at the beginning, increases the value of the property adjacent to it. The most valuable land in New York City is all the real estate around Central Park. When we bought our first parcel at the North Kingsville Sand Barrens, which is the only Black Oak Ribbon Barrens left, and it's in North Kingsville, Nashville County, the auditor told the neighbors, your property values are going to go up. And they said, I don't care. I'd rather have the barrens protected. I'll pay higher taxes. In fact, the woman who we bought the first 58 acres from, in 3 years, she was paying more for the 5 acres she retained than she paid on the house and the 58 acres she sold us. So, but greens, quality of life. The other thing is you have so much biodiversity here. People travel to see it. So they spend money in McDonald's. They spend money, they stay over. Some of them will camp out, some of them will stay in a motel. There's so much great, outstanding natural areas and rare habitats that people don't have other places. If you live down over in Toledo, you're not going to see most of the things I've shown you. These are Appalachian, a lot of these are Appalachian species. So people come, they spend a lot of money, but then the quality of life, something that, that is, you really, everybody wants to live next to something, a forest or, well, not everybody. I'm sure there's some people that hate trees and hate forests. And in fact, unfortunately, the great thing about the parks too is kids get exposed and learn to like it. If kids don't go into a woods until they're in like the 9th grade or 7th grade, they're afraid of it, and they don't have connection to it. We used to bring kids from the inner city in the Glenville area and take them out to a gorge in Ashtabula County, and they were literally frightened. And they, so because of your parks, the kids get into loving nature and loving the woods at a young age, and they'll love them for the rest of their life. So, but that's the last slide. But I'd be happy to, if somebody has a question, I'll try to answer it. So thanks a lot.
As you know, the Emerald Ash Borer is here now.
Right.
There's millions of ash trees in Geauga County.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect in the next decade or so we're going to lose most of it. Do you know how it's going to impact the forest environment?
Yeah, there's some good news. It's mostly bad news, but there's some good news. In Ground Zero, the southwestern Michigan and southeastern Michigan and northwestern Ohio, where it first showed up here, like the U.S. Forest Service was like, cut them all down, cut them all. Well, it turns out it was a bad decision because it turns out 3% are immune. They're resistant. And in fact, some of them that are affected are forming scar tissue. So that's only true so far in the white ash. But that's our commercial tree. That's the tree of the rich forest. In fact, where we have our western white butterflies, the grandeur terraces, there's a lot, it's in your rich mixed forest, there's always a lot of white ash. And so I was really concerned if that all opens up, the sunlight gets in, it's not going to be good for the western white butterfly because it's strictly a forest butterfly. Unfortunately, the green ash, the black ash, they seem to be, black ash is my favorite. You have a lot of black ash in this county. It's found in the bogs and the swamps, like Montville Swamp, like Kelso. They don't seem to show resistance yet. Hopefully there might be one or two. But it is great news that, so if you have white ash, wait to see if they die before you cut them. You really shouldn't go in and cut them all. We're not going to do it. In fact, we decided we were going to treat ours, but the treatment literally kills every insect everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, so it's like, I decided I'd rather collect the fruits and the park's been doing that. Geauga Park, Lake Park, we've been doing it to replant. So you collect the seeds now, you replant it. It is like a firestorm, and it'll move through, and then you can replant. So it's, I mean, it may come back again, but it's still something that should be done. So everybody should be, the U.S. Forest Service is storing the seeds for all of us in Colorado, at minus 40 centigrade. So is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You said the treatment kills off.
the treatment's really bad.
That herb treatment.
Yeah, we were going to do it in Menor Marsh because we have a little remnant of the swamp forest in the south shore of Menor Marsh, and we got an estimate of $25,000 from Davy Resources to do it, and was because it's like there's 3 different species of ash there, pumpkin ash, and there's a little pumpkin ash in this county as well. It's a rare ash, and when we found out that it totally kills every insect, we decided it's better to replant, collect the seed and replant. But the good thing is, I mean, it's 3% is quite a good percentage. It could be even less, but if there's 3% are resistant, and some of them are showing reaction to the borer by forming scar tissue, and the same is true. We have blue ash on Kelly's Island, and it's doing the same thing. It was getting, in fact, we have a few white ash in Kelly's Island. All the green ash around it were killed. It's a place, we bought it in '97, it's called the Sweet Valley, just south of the glacial grooves. And there's some white ash there, and they're not touched. So, but every green ash around it was killed. It's really sad for because the green ash is one of our common trees on floodplain forests and in a lot of the swamps. Yes.
So, could you briefly tell us how you should be controlling the deer? I mean, do we have a lottery and open it up and let everybody?
Well, I don't think anybody in this room, but when it was proposed to the commissioners, Paul, wildlife, your wildlife manager asked me. In fact, we had a LEAP meeting, which is a partnership museum founded over 10 years ago, and it was at Presque Isle. Would you go back to the park board meeting and promote our deer hunting? Because we hunt on our preserves. When we saw a browse line in the hemlocks at the Grandeur Terraces in 1996, we started private hunting. We now have private hunting on almost every preserve where we can have it. And we still have an understory. Another organization had a similar swamp like ours, Hemlock Swamp and Mixed Forest, 5 miles to the south. They decided to study the problem. There's no understory, it's not coming back. They can hunt, but you have to hit it as the disaster is happening. Because the deer totally annihilate the entire understory. You're going to lose your forest birds, you're going to lose your butterflies, you're going to lose your wildflowers, all your biodiversity. And this is a problem from New England to Florida to every state in the east at this point. And then there's problems with mule deer. I mean, you've got to have some kind of deer control to maintain biodiversity. You're not going to have your birds and your butterflies. You're not going to have the great things in the park. Anyway, we started our hunting in '96. Last year we had maybe 40 hunters. We can actually see recovery. We still have rich wildflowers. Beaumont Boy Scout Camp is just to the south of us. They have 1,000 acres, and there's nothing there. There's a few people. The ranger and a couple friends hunt, but it's not enough. So they're denuded. There's nothing in the understory. So it does work, and it's a great program. And then I'm not as, I mean, the turkey is fine, but we have some turkey hunting is a little more dangerous. So if we have turkey hunters, we only, like if I have a block of 100 acres, we just have one hunter in it. With deer, you can have more hunters per acre, you know, in a property. But it's really funny when I sat down after being booed, and I don't think anybody in that room was in favor of the hunt. But then I sat next to the Bible and said, oh, I should have mentioned in Montville Swamp, because we found an endangered fern about 9 years ago. And it was one. I never collected. There's only one. In fact, I don't collect anything unless there's 12. We collect vouchers if there's a lot of something, and it goes into our scientific plant collection, which is mounted on 100% rag paper, and they last for hundreds of years. But anyway, we take photos. So I brought my photographer, Judy Sumrock, back, and we tried to find it, and guess what? The turkey scratched it off. There was one triangle grape fern. And it was the second occurrence in the state, too. Now it's down in, there's a site down in Hocking County. So there's 3 places in Ohio right now. But that was the only place in Geauga County, and I'm sure it probably came back up. So we searched for 3 hours, and we found the brown corpse. I mean, we're talking like the size of the whole plant is the size of one of my fingernails. It's a little tiny fern, and we put it between wet paper towel, and it's the worst specimen in our herbarium. I mean, so anyway, I sat down and said, oh, maybe I should have. So I went up and said, oh, well, actually, turkeys killed an endangered species. And I got booed again. Now, was anybody in that audience booed? You don't have to raise your hand. I wouldn't expect you to. But it's the right thing to do. Because you're going to lose all your biodiversity. Our board has been really good about it. They're frightened by the liability, and I'm concerned a little about it. The hunters fight with each other. The Amish fight with them, especially the Amish fight with each other. We've had some interesting times, but we took 22 deer off last year, and 17 of them were does, and we saw a real reaction. You know, usually we see a lot of eaten trilliums. This year there was actually recovery of trilliums. Didn't see a lot of browsing. Of course, the hummingbirds are still wall to wall. The wood thrush are still wall to wall. We have hermit thrush. We have 10 rare birds in that preserve. It's our Granny terraces, and there's probably that many in Montville and Observatory Park too. I mean, this park district is loaded with good species, and the park has been doing the right management. They've been the right stewardship. And once again, I work with all the park districts in northeastern Ohio, and I worked with the directors, the first director. You know, Kim, weren't you working at Geauga when I started at the museum?
No, I've never worked
You
with
introduced
Geauga.
me to Don Strock.
Yes, Always Lake,
Yeah. And
starting 71.
okay. Well, the Don Meyer, you also knew Don Meyer. I mean, it's like that's when I met Don Meyer when I started working at the museum, and we did a lot of looking at properties and made recommendations, and they always followed through on it. That's the other thing I really like about this park is when we recommended they buy something, they've done it. And and a lot of times we've helped, in the case of Nature Conservancy, when I'm still on the board of Nature Conservancy, I'm honorary life trustee, but we did raise a lot of the money for Lake Kelso. So, yes?
What about trapping deer? What other than chewing the trees down? How do they?
Well, that's a controversy. I don't do it. I resist it on our preserves unless it floods a road, and it does sometimes, and then I have to give in. I actually resist trapping beavers because beavers sustain fens. They sustain wetlands. They are the greatest wetland maker we have. But that's an individual decision. I'll give you an example. When I started working at the museum, the director and the chairman, one of the people on the board, the beavers flooded Fern Lake, and maybe you know about the story, maybe you don't. beavers flooded Fern Lake. This was 1971, 72. It was 72 we went in. And they were all horrified because the red maples on the south side were dying. Well, the red maples established in the 30s when there was a drought after they cut the trees on the west shore and the south shore. We walked in, and all the rare species at Fern Lake, like I say, remember I told you that it's 16 feet of peat on the south side and there's 30 feet of peat on the other side? The whole inner zone floated upward as the water level raised a couple of feet. So none of the tamaracks were dead. All the rare species were still there in that inner ring. But it did look pretty bad for a while. But we decided, well, they're not doing any damage. So there was never any reproduction of larger tamarack, which is a very rare tree in Ohio now. And of course, we have it at Lake Kelso, we have it at Fern, we have it at our Single Lake Bog, but there's, and Kent Bog in Kent, and we just bought a forest with tamarack on the south end of Long Lake called Long Lake Bog. But we never saw any reproduction of tamarack. And there was a study done in 1939. There was one seedling on the south shore of Fern Lake after it was cut in 36. So it was cut. The northeast shore was not cut, or the northern half was not cut, but the southern half was. And so no reproduction. Well, about 10 years after the flooding, we started to see seedlings of tamarack. Now we have over 100 seedlings and saplings of tamarack. So the beavers actually triggered the reproduction of the tamarack. Also, a lot of the rare species that were confined to the inner ring of the bog, after the red maples died and they fell over, they started showing all over the place. So a lot of the rare plants expanded. So the beavers actually did a great thing with the bog. Beavers also are the mechanism to sustain glacial fens. And you have your great fen, the Sunnybrook fen, and we have Coliker fen, which we're about to add some property to. Beavers are the reason fens stick around. All fens grow to forest. They become a forest fen, but most of the rare species are in that open part of the fen that appear after the beavers leave. The seep is there all the time. These are the alkaline seeps that are fed by huge deposits of sand and gravel, high in alkalinity. And so the beavers abandon it. Eventually the dam drops, and all the plants reestablish. So that without beavers drive fens. Without beavers, you don't have fens. So, now in the case where you've got only one or two, now this county doesn't have a lot of fens. You've got Sunnybrook fen. There's literally, there's fen system at Lake Kelso in part of the shore, because there's just big springs that come out on the north side of Lake Kelso. And of course there's fen south of Pond Road too. But we let that happen. After seeing it happen, I've seen fens recover in Pennsylvania. It's a little tough sometimes, so we don't trap beaver unless it's flooding the road. So that's a policy the museum has, but the Park District could have any policy they want. If you do sometimes lose for a long time some of the rare species, but you don't. But the habitat always comes back because those springs they've been there for 12,000 years. Actually, in this county, longer. There's places that have been ice-free in this county longer than 12,000 years. But so the fens come back because that system, that major surging spring water, because you have so much sand and gravel from Burton, Chardon, all the way down through the southeastern part of the southwestern part of the county. And, yes?
Back to the deer stewardship, which I don't have a problem with. Do you know if it's typical to do an open lottery for anybody with a hunting license?
We actually, we asked for our deer hunters in the museum, and I think I know they do a good job. I've seen them. They check on. You have to have a reference. They check them. They have to go through a program with them. What they were doing before, I don't know what they're doing now, but I know before they had a program where they would come in and work with the park staff, and I know that they were doing a good job. So the bad thing is you got to close the park down. I'll tell you something I did. I started working in Presque Isle in 1985, and it had the worst deer problem I've ever seen. And in 1987, and he didn't know stewardship. In 1987, I went to the advisory council, the Presque Isle Advisory Council, and I said, well, if you want to look like Sandusky Bay, continue doing nothing, and the invasive plants you have established now will wipe you out in 20 years. Well, they didn't like the idea, and they said, go back to Cleveland and stewardship. But 9 years, I did eventually convince them. The trouble is, it went from 80% natural to 20% natural, and now they just raised $1 million to try. Well, they've been doing stewardship since '96, but if they'd have done it in '87, they probably could have gotten rid of the weeds. The other was, I said, the deer were horrendous. I mean, I walk into a wetland and they'd snort, they were eating stuff in the wetlands. I actually saw them wipe out a blueberry. There was one place for one particular blueberry, which is endangered in Ohio. And it's actually in Montville Swamp, the velvet blueberry. It's also a Ladue Reservoir. But it ate it out. It totally destroyed it. It was just one little small population. And there were some other endangered threatened plants that, something called Cocoon, it was the only place left in the state. They were like, the deer had it down to like 2 dozen. So finally, when the deer tick showed up in 1987, the fall, in fact, I was there, I got a bunch of them on me in November of '87, they used our data to justify the deer hunt. And they have bucked it. PETA has picketed. PETA hates me. There's still bad mouthing of the museum on radio talk shows in Erie, Pennsylvania, because we're the ones that talked the park into doing a deer hunt, and they still do it. They tried to do it in Bucks County because it worked in Presque Isle, and the people fought it and they stopped. Bucks County near Philadelphia, state park down there. Because they did that, the recovery was phenomenal. They were eating lupins. It's one of the few places there's lupin in Pennsylvania. The lupins responded. The coon responded. A lot of endangered species responded. And they were going out and eating like all the arrowhead and marshes. It was just. And the funny thing is, the Game Commission said, "Oh, there's not a deer problem," because they fly over. They fly and get the deer count in the wintertime. Well, the people who live on the embankment, the bluffs at Presque Isle, know that there's a deer problem because the deer leave the park in the winter, and the Game Commission didn't know it. So, I mean, in fact, I was in a public meeting, and I said something about, well, there's a ton of deer, and then everybody who in that meeting said, yes, they come to our yard, they eat everything. But, so they actually, and now the understory's back. I mean, the park has recovered, and that started in '89. They started that deer hunt in '89, and it's still going strong today. They closed the park for one day there. So when we have our hunts, when we have field trips on a property, we tell the deer hunter not to come. And of course, the park's done a good job of closing it off when they have the hunting too. But you really have to control the deer. Our Menor Marsh Preserve is a disaster right now, and it's all deer. There was a no hunting policy, it was a law, no hunting in Mentor, Ohio, the city of Menor, of course, Menor Marsh, most of it's in the city of Menor, part of it's in Painesville Township. And of course, once no one could grow anything, and there was an accident every other night on every other street with a car and a deer, there was a few people opposed to it, but they're doing it. They're actually, and they're making a huge difference. We're seeing it. They were wiping everything out in Menor Marsh. It's, yes?
Anything new on the bee population front?
What was that again?
With regard to the bees?
Bees? Oh, yeah. Honeybees? Yeah, native bees are the greatest. And native bees and, of course, honeybees are in trouble. But the park sustains the most astounding diversity of native bees. And the native bees do a better job of pollinating. I don't know if you know this, but they do a better job of pollinating than the honeybee. Honeybee's fickle. If it's just right, sunny and 70, not too much wind, the honeybees are all over the place. But the native bees, these little tiny guys, there's small bumblebees, bumblebees will come out in the cold, they'll pollinate your entire blueberry crop, your apple crop. So the parks are sustaining your native bee fauna. And of of course, all of you who might own land and are keeping some natural areas on your property are doing the same thing. But no, it's the diversity of, because one of my employees, Judy Semrock, she's really into native bees, and of course she's always involved when we have the Geauga County Bio Blitzes. And she's always finding some rare bee, or more than one rare bee. So it's really important to preserve natural areas, both meadows and forests and fens, all the different systems. But the native bees, once again, are superior for your pollination of your garden crops and especially your fruit crops. It can be, like I say, 39 in not the nicest weather, and you go out there and there's some native bees, and you're not going to see a single honeybee out there. It's got to be perfect. Sunny, 70. So, yes.
I know how to get rid of those buckthorn seedlings and saplings. And I've done a lot in my woods. But once something is established as kind of a scrub tree, if you just cut it off, it comes back like a
You mean the
orchid.
buckthorn?
Yeah. So how do you deal with it once it's like a tree?
Well, the best way to deal with buckthorn, and it's our nemesis too. It's our nemesis, absolutely. It's in every bog, every fen, every forest. We're buying the last large remnant of swamp forest on the Erie Lake Plain between Cleveland and the Pennsylvania line. It's called Cheneva Swamp. We could maybe buy as much as 10,000 acres. There's that much from the Lake County line to Route 45 in Saybrook Township. And it's loaded with buckthorn. The best way to do it is something called a poly tube. And there's directions on how to, I know the park knows about it, but there's directions on how to do it. You can make them yourselves. You can make them in, I have interns make them like 5 in a few hours. But they're polyethylene tubes, and you have a cap on the top and a cap on the bottom, and you have to use spun wool. It's got to be, you go to a Goodwill or Salvation Army. We like to do this. We go to Goodwill and Salvation Army. We buy wool sweaters and you boil it, and it gets all fluffy. And then you use like a 25% glyphosate, or you can use Roundup, but we don't. We always use glyphosate. It's a safe form of the active ingredient in Roundup. Or you can buy something like Aquamate, which is ready-made. It's got a spreader sticker in it. But you just you cut the stem and you just dab it and it kills it. It's the best way, because any other way you're going to kill everything else. If you do something called clip and drip at buckthorn, it kills the sphagnum moss. It kills everything around it, including the endangered species you don't want killed. But this poly tube is a great method, the best method I know for killing the glossy buckthorn. Any shrub, in fact. Another bad one, of course, is autumn mallow. I can send Kathy or somebody the directions on how to make it, and make it available. But we've tried every other way, and this poly tube doesn't have collateral damage. And I hate it when there's something, clip and drip is where you take you have a sprayer and you cut it, it invariably doesn't just go on the cut part, it goes lots of places you don't want to go, and oftentimes it's endangered species, there's only like 4 of them or something, and then sometimes you could lose 3 of them in the process. With the poly tube, it doesn't happen. So, yes?
Well, what about using the Gordon, painting it on the cut stems?
Garland, you mean?
Tordon.
The Tordon? I think that's a little... Okay, I'm not an expert on herbicide, but Chuck is. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't like Tordon much. I'd rather use Garland.
Yeah, I've heard bad things about Tordon too, but I'm not an expert at that. So I have staff that do most of the killing.
And what about the method of painting it on with a paintbrush?
Paintbrushes work well. Paintbrushes do work well. A little 1/4-inch paintbrush. So
As long as you apply it carefully, so it doesn't run off or spray off like you brush it fly. You have to dab it on gently.
Jim, I had somebody recommend take the clippers and just dip the clippers in Roundup when you cut. Have you know of anyone who's tried that?
I've actually never tried that.
Somebody recommended that to me,
Okay.
but I've not tried it either.
Well, the polytube, have you tried the polytube?
No.
Have you ever done it? It really does a lot of buckthorn in a short period of time.
Jim,
Yes.
the Holden Arboretum uses the same thing, and like I told these people here, they call it the dauber of death. It's fantastic.
Oh, it is amazing.
They have
Yeah.
6 miles of edge line, and they use it all around the whole Holden Arboretum.
Yeah, well, actually, I learned from Nate Becku when he was I learned about the polytube from Nate Becku when he was the land steward at Holden. He was one of the best land stewards we've ever had. Unfortunately, now in Illinois, that's where he grew up, and his wife wanted to go back. So we really lost a great steward with him. So, anybody else have any? Yes.
You mentioned several times you had a great relationship with Geauga Parks District, preserving lands together. And you would transfer lands to them. Over the last couple of years, what's transpired, a lot of the reasons I'm sitting here telling, is that relationship, is it still ironclad? Are you still have
Well,
a relationship?
I'm careful about telling anybody. If I go to a park board meeting, I won't even sit near the. I don't want to get one of them in trouble because I'm not real popular right now. I'm glad I don't. I'm glad I live in Ashtabula County. So I'm really concerned because the staff is great, and they've already been damaged. I mean, they've lost employees. They were doing the greatest job. It's just, I really hope it can turn around. I can't believe the district that was doing it the best is now in the worst shape. You know, Cleveland's really done a great job. But Geauga was doing it. Actually, the museum promoted stewardship in 1991. I spoke at the Parks and Recreation annual meeting in Toledo, and I was talking about stewardship. I said, everybody should start doing stewardship. Otherwise, we're not going to have anything left for the next generation. And that's absolutely true with any natural area. Without stewardship, no natural area is going to be around for 50 years. It's got to be. There's so many challenges with deer, and especially invasive species, and they can just wipe out the native species and all the native, like in the case of the western white, the food plant, the nectar plants. Without that, you get too many deer gone. Or invasives can do the same thing. Of course, another thing is worms. You know, there's no such thing as native worms, but I don't have a, you know.
I know you probably be somewhat careful with it.
Yeah, I don't want to get someone in trouble.
Yeah, you're choosing words.
Yes, I don't want to blurt out the name of somebody that I talked to on the way here, in fact. And I let them sob on my shoulder because, you know, I have my problems with the museum, but, you know, it's the sweetest place in the world compared to... Natural areas, by the way, is outside the operating budget. And it has been since I started buying land in 1988 because another organization, a statewide organization, stopped. And you might think about who it might be, but its effect is places that they stopped responding to our science in 1983. There was some place they actually registered Colliker in Munson Township, and Mrs. Colliker called and said we're ready to sell. And they said, well, we don't care about places like that anymore. So I went upstairs and I asked for permission to raise the money to buy it. They came down to half the market price. It still took me quite a while to raise it, and on the heels of that, then the North Kingsville Sand Barrens, and then we were under 1,000 acres in 1988 when I started. Now we have probably the best collection from the standpoint of rare species. We have over 200 rare species. We have many rare species that are no place else in the state. We have many species new to science on our preserves. You know, brand new species. We have lots of species brand new to science on our preserve lands. Geauga does too, for sure. Once you start looking down at the beetle level, in fact, we found a lot of rare beetles doing the bioblitzes in the Geauga County parks. But no, I certainly hope this turns around, because it's terrible to see the best getting undermined. And the staff, they have such dedicated and great staff. So it's yes, John.
Jim, the state wildlife department seems to have a policy where they maintain a large deer population because they sell hunting licenses, so they want to be able to keep their income. If you were the chief of the division, how would you do it? Would you have a lot of hunting at one time, so you bring the population way down and then let them recover, try to get a cycle going?
I think you have to have sustained. It's got to be sustained, and it's got to be everywhere. It's we try to get a deer nuisance permit, but we have an understory because we've been controlling deer since 96, and they come in and look and say, you don't have a problem. Well, we do. The carrying capacity is like 12 deer, maybe 15 in some places, and not 100 and 130. That's disaster, that's destruction. But we started hunting at the Grand River Terraces when it was still a fairly low number, and we have kept it down. I would control more deer if I could, but we cannot get a nuisance permit because they come back and say, you can't even see through this woods. Well, you're not supposed to be able to see a mile through the woods. You're not supposed to see even a feet through it. A natural woods, people have gotten used to it. People like the fact that they can see their neighbor's house, a half a mile away. That's becoming the new norm, and it's really sad because our forest birds and everything else, western white, etc., it's that dense, natural. A natural forest is actually, you can't see through it. Yes?
Something, although we personally don't own parkland, some way we can help with the deer is if you have enough land to have hunters, you can register with the Department of Natural Resources, and they will tell people who call them that you allow hunting. And although our property isn't a park, I figure that helps in the whole overall picture.
It certainly does.
So others could do that.
Well, I don't hunt either. I think about it, but I'm too busy. But some of my staff get so angry with them, they're not hunting. When they go out, it's like one of our preserves in Lorain County, one of my staff members was trying to get a doe every year. And of course, the does are what count. You want the does. And it is true that the one thing about the Amish is they're after the meat, and they're really good about killing does, and they kill a lot of them. So it's they just fight with each other. That's the only problem. It's a big problem. In fact, we sent one family away because they were bothering another family. And somebody took a chainsaw to a $1,000 sign. I can't prove a thing, but any more questions? I'll tell you what, it's getting pretty late. If you have any more questions, I'll stick around. Yes. Okay. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jim. And thank you, everybody, for your attention and for being here tonight and for being so on board with the program. We still have cookies over here, and as you go over to the cookies, you'll see that we have some volunteer sign-up sheets. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of different areas that we've been working on. I'll get you. So if you go up to the cookies, look and see if there's a couple of different areas. We need people who do research. We need people who do to do some marketing and general help with events. Lots of good volunteer opportunities, and we won't overtax you. You just tell us what you can do and what you'd like to do, and we would be really happy to get you involved. One more thing from Jim.
I'm going to get in trouble because I have a fundraiser. I should say, all our programs outside the operating budget, we raise about $500,000 a year for my staff. It's mostly staff and fringe, plus our land. And plus the board makes sure we raise 20% of anything we buy to put in our endowment. But anyway, my fundraiser sent donor cards if anybody's interested. So if I walk back with these, I'm in trouble. So if you're interested, come up. I'll just put them on the table up here. Okay. I didn't bring a lot, so take them with donors.
I had one thing. One of the research subjects we're doing is the hunting and trapping. Okay, for the trapping, they've issued 7 permits. Only one of them has an actual animal on it, of what they're supposed to trap. The other ones are open. So that's one of the committees that you can help us do research on that. Okay, so there's lots of other research subjects, but a lot of people have been concerned about the trapping lottery, since this is the first time they've had a lottery.
Yeah. And Kent wanted to say something really quick, but we are, come on up, Kent, so they can hear you. And we just, please help yourself to cookies. Also, it's really important, once again, to get a good turnout next week at the park board meeting. We'd love to see as many of you here on the, I think it's the 9th, Tuesday the 9th, as possible. Not here. It's going to be at Westwood, right? Westwoods. But do check the website because they are liable to change the time, the place, or the date at a moment's notice. So.
I've been very fortunate as a small child. I used to think I was unusual, but like about every child I've ever talked to, I had a great love for animals. And from that, it expanded into plants and into geology. And from those experiences as a kid, I went on to college and all that stuff. But I got my education, as I know Jim did also. He did a lot of things as a teenager. You just got an advanced commentary on the complexity of creating parks and having them last. One thing Jim didn't mention on the size, I'd never heard anybody say the acreage. But the problem is if you have a tornado hit an area, it can do massive damage and it will be centuries before it recovers. Just want to comment that if you look at the Ohio of 1800, we no longer have elk, timber wolves. We do have a few bear, but not nearly as many as I'd like to have. So we also have lost a great number of things. I've been doing this a long, long time. Well, more than 70 years, I'll say. I was full-time with Cleveland Parks for a number of years, full-time with Lake Metro Parks. I have never seen a group like this. And I don't know if you realize it, but when you walk into a meeting, yes, they can hold you to 2 minutes for your comments, but they can't shut you up by law. And I have been told, I haven't pushed this one yet, that when you have hair the color of mine, a minor misdemeanor is really, it's not, since I don't have to work, it doesn't impact. Great to see you folks.
Say good night to everybody, and once again, thank you for coming out. Please show up for the park board meetings and keep on buying those signs and T-shirts. We still have our next event coming up. Will be our next conversation. It may not be our next. We may have another event between now and then. But January 25th is a Sunday afternoon. We'll be having Tim Barber from the Environ International Corporation, and he will talk about the dollars and cents, the value of conservation from an economic standpoint. And I think it's an important discussion that a lot of people need to hear. So spread the word.
We are still trying to find out where. It's to be announced, and I will have that on the website as soon as I find out. We'll put it on Facebook. We'll send out notices. We'll have advertisements in the paper. So, thank you for coming.